Welcome back, it's Ryzen, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a completely blind review on the second arc of Hell's Paradise. This is my second arc review, so if you haven't seen the first one, you should definitely go check that one out before you watch this one. It is linked down in the description below. With that all out of the way, this arc is called the Lord Tensen arc, and it encompasses chapters 17 through 59. As a whole, I thought this arc was a pretty good read, and it expanded upon the island and the characters. To help me organize this review, since I'm going to be covering quite a bit of content, I thought I would just go through the arc chronologically and cover my thoughts on the characters, as well as some of the highs and the lows of the story. To start, we need to talk about Zhu Jin versus Tenza and Shion. This fight was probably one of the best fights in the manga so far. I really enjoyed how it set up the Lord Tensen as beings that are truly deserving of fear. Zhu Jin is portrayed as a majestic god. His clothing, body language, and fighting style all just exude elegance, and it gives off a vibe to the characters and the readers that this opponent is seemingly above all humans. I really enjoy how Zhu Jin manages to captivate the whimsical yet eerie feeling that this manga is constantly giving off. The fact that Zhu Jin visibly switches genders is a perfect depiction of this. As Zhu Jin is just beating the crap out of Tenza, Shion comes by and beheads Zhu Jin. Shion's character introduction was really cool, and he's by far one of my favorite characters in the series. I usually always like the typical anime blind guy, and Shion meets all the requirements. Scarred eyes? Check. One of the strongest in the verse? Check. Can somehow maneuver and fight perfectly despite being completely blind? Check. But Shion is interesting because the author was just self-aware that he was creating a character that had all of these standard anime blind guy tropes, and Shion himself actually jokes about the fact that even though he is blind, he can still act normally. I actually really enjoyed this aspect of his character, and I found myself cracking a smile whenever these jokes were made. Another thing that I like about Shion is the fact that he literally murdered his prisoner for trying to seduce him. Like, holy crap, bro. Imagine if this dude opened Twitch and looked at the Discover page, he'd probably commit genocide or something. Anyways, the fight ended with Tenna dying and Shion running away with Nurugai. When I first read this, everything felt so sudden and it left a sour taste in my mouth, but in hindsight, the ending to this fight was actually quite incredible. Not only was Tenza's backstory pretty good, but it actually subverted nearly everybody's expectations in killing off Tenza, and also having Shion actually flee the battlefield, ensuring that Tenza's sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. Additionally, that moment was great setup for some amazing development for both Shion and Nurugai, so overall this fight succeeded in setting the stage for some great side characters and the villains. And then we go to Gabimaru's fight with Zhu Jin, and it was much less impactful. I didn't really think too much of it, and I think Jigokuraku is at its weakest when it's just delivering pure action. I prefer a more nuanced approach to storytelling, and I think that this fight was fairly simplistic. I did like the transformation that Zhu Jin took, however. After some time, we then get some dialogue from the Lord Tensen that is just incredible. I think the Lord Tensen are incredibly interesting. Their overly sexual nature combined with this god complex that they all seem to have just gives them such a mythological feel. I also like that even though they think that they are far beyond human, they're weary to not underestimate humans. They specifically call out Chobe, saying that they may face trouble if he escapes the pit because there is nothing more terrifying than a wounded beast. After this, we get a new squad form that is composed of Gabimaru, Mei, Gantetsusai, and Fuchi. I think this squad is a much better squad than the one with Yuzuriha, Senta, and Sagiri because Gantetsusai is actually a really entertaining character and his interactions with Gabimaru are pretty hilarious. His motivation of wanting to become a legendary warrior and the fact that he doesn't even care about the immortality elixir is really cool. I found myself drawn to his idea that true immortality isn't something as petty and boring as physically existing on this planet forever, but rather creating a legacy so great that your character lives on to be immortal. I really like this idea and I hope that it gets challenged in some way and we get to see him further affirm his beliefs. I also just can't help but draw comparisons between him and Rak from Tower of God, but maybe that's just because I'm also reading Tower of God at the same time. As for the other characters in the group, Mei is there to provide insight on the island, and her character was quite mysterious for the majority of the arc, which is very engaging to read, and Fuchi wasn't too interesting, but I'll take anybody over Senta at this point. Mei then explains Tao to the group, which is so far a pretty interesting power system. In terms of the abilities it grants, I think it's fairly basic and simple, but in terms of how it functions, I think it's extremely unique and complex. Just the fact that you can literally get stronger from having sex is something I never thought I'd read in a shonen manga. Like, imagine just helping your stepsister get out of the washing machine and then all of a sudden you can destroy the planet. Like, holy crap, dude. Anyways, after a lot of exposition, we finally go back to Chobe and we see him fight the Doshi. This fight scene really left an impression on me. We get to see the extent of Chobe's adaptability, which has been hyped up this entire time, and we also get some insight into his character. I like how he doesn't care at all about losing his humanity as long as he still has his bond with his brother. This is likely foreshadowing his fight with Gabimaru, where his loss of humanity actually ends up causing him to lose that bond temporarily. Back to the fight with the Doshi, seeing Chobe immediately grasp Tao was actually very cool to read here, as his ability to quickly grasp and adapt things has been established from the beginning. I would like to point out though that the fact that every single person ended up grasping Tao nearly immediately did get kind of stale, and it felt a little bit rushed, but I suppose it is better than going through a boring training arc. Overall, I really enjoyed Chobe throughout the entirety of the arc, and he was definitely one of my favorite characters alongside Shion and Gantetsusai. After some more stuff, we get to see what is happening on the mainland with Jika and Shugen, and it gets revealed that the village chief is actually sending a platoon of shinobi to kill Gabimaru. I thought that this was a little unnecessary because Gabimaru is already out here struggling real bad on the island anyways, and I don't see why the village chief could have just requested Gabimaru not to go to the island in the first place and just donated some soldiers instead, or even wait for Gabimaru to come back from the island and just kill him in his sleep. But hey, there's more fuel to the fire now, I guess. I was also very impressed by the shinobi's resolve, especially because that one dude just actually slit his throat on command for no reason, and it makes me think of them as less honorable and more just as fools who have no regard for the value of life. But that's the entire purpose of them, so I guess that means that they're well written. As for the members of the Asaemon clan who are coming to the island, I am a huge fan of all of them, especially Shugen, who has a really cool backstory of viciously murdering criminals, and the scene where he was mourning Aizen's death was really good. Although it fell flat because Aizen himself was a pretty flat character, it was absolutely redeemed by Shugen chipping his blade once again to ensure all those that he killed will suffer in death. This character is just sick, and I can't wait to see what he's gonna do. Anyways, the next interesting thing to happen was the fight with Mudan versus Sagiri, Yuzuriha, and Senta. This fight did tend to drag on a little bit and get a little stale, but overall it was probably the most well choreographed fight in the series. Again, I don't really like Sagiri, and seeing her become really strong was cool and all, but her motivation and character development is just coming from her drawing inspiration from Gabimaru, which kinda sucks. Sagiri is her own character, and I would like her to have her own character arc that isn't either the same thing as Gabimaru's or heavily inspired by Gabimaru. Yuzuriha and Senta actually had some incredible character development though, and I really enjoyed how Yuzuriha's free-spirited nature was expanded upon, and I love the irony of the fact that she lives her entire life lying to everybody except herself. We then see Mudan transform into his evolved form, which of course is beautifully designed as always. And then right as Yuzuriha and Sagiri are about to just get absolutely clapped on, my boy Shion comes in with a sick entry and saves the day. This was honestly one of the most hype moments in the entire arc, and I was very excited to see the events that would unfold from here. The rest of the fight is just well choreographed action, and the ending gave Senta just about as good of a death as you could give a useless heap of filth. At the conclusion of this fight, we then have Sagiri saying that after everything they had gone through, they no longer have a prisoner-executioner relationship, and this is just great because it shows that we really have come a long way from when we first started. After some time, we see that Gabimaru had lost his memory, and overall I didn't really mind this, but I wish it was further expanded upon or it had greater consequences. It felt like this just happened for the sake of showing us how Gabimaru was like before he had fallen in love with his wife, but honestly the contrasts between the two versions of Gabimaru didn't really jump out to me as much as I would have liked it to, but I do appreciate the subtleties that we got. This leads into the Gabimaru versus Chobe fight, which as I mentioned earlier ends up devolving into just a fight between complete monsters. The lack of humanity seemingly elevated the stakes, and it portrayed these characters in a very interesting way. And as for the conclusion of the arc, we have Chobe going off to go lay some pipe with the Lord Tensen to increase his power, and then we get the formation of a dream team composed of all of the characters that we had been following thus far. The arc ended pretty conclusively, but I'm still looking forward to discovering what the next arc had in store. Now you may have noticed I did skip over some fights and some characters, but that's just because they didn't really interest me too much and I just didn't really have enough to talk about with them. So now that I've gone over the entirety of the arc, I wanted to give some big picture criticism. I didn't really enjoy the constant exposition dump that we seem to get quite often. It wasn't very engaging to read, and I felt like we found out too much too quickly. I much prefer the more slow burn style of exposition, and after reading the last arc I was expecting just that, so maybe it's on me for having those expectations. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, the fighting that wasn't between important characters was really boring, and it just seemed to slow down plot progression. I found myself quite bored after either seeing somebody cut down a monster for the 50th time or just reading a huge block full of text of information that I wasn't even interested in. With that being said, I did still overall enjoy this arc. The story was fairly interesting and there were curveballs being thrown in quite frequently. I especially enjoyed that the sheer existence of things that are crucial to the plot, such as Gabimaru's wife and the immortality elixir, were being questioned. I thought that made the story much more engaging. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. If you liked the video, please be sure to leave a like, as it really does help a small channel like mine. Leave a comment as well with your thoughts on the series or any constructive criticism you may have for me. And if you enjoy content on anime and manga, I do upload chapter reviews and other types of videos as well, so subscribe to not miss out on those. And I'm really close to 100 subscribers, so you going the extra mile to help me reach that milestone would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much for making it to the end, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.
Don't touch sister, only brother with pussy.
Back to that level.